evening. This is Tuesday night Bible study. Thank you for joining us. So we're going to jump right into it tonight. We're actually going to talk tonight about being rooted in the Word of God. But before I get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what this new month is that we've come into. We're now in the month of Shabbat. Kind of why I'm talking about being rooted in the Word of God tonight, because the month of Shabbat part of it has to do about it being the new year of the trees, but I'll get into that a little bit more. So I'm just going to go over briefly some things about the significance of what this month is and what it holds and the importance of it for us. I mean, all the months have something important for us, but it seems like there's certain characteristics of each month that is just, there's so much richness and depth to it, and we really need to apply what the months mean to our own personal lives. So the Hebrew month of Shabbat, this month holds a significant connection between us and the Torah. There's a very deep, significant connection with this month and with the Word, which we know is Yahweh's instruction. I mean, this is our game plan for life. We've been talking about that a lot lately, about games and the importance of our coach and stuff. And this Word has all the plans that we need to live life successfully. Just like when you talk about football. Everybody's talking about football right now because the Super Bowl is coming up and stuff. And, they have a game plan that they're going to be following. Each team has a game plan that they're going to be following. It's a game plan that consists of all these different types of strategies for themselves offensively, but for themselves defensively also, but also all these different types of strategies to win against the enemy, to know what to do and how to respond against the opponent. So for us, we know that this is a game plan that is full of strategies and answers and everything that we need to be able to live this life successfully. So in the month of Shabbat, it's an opportunity for us to delve into this Word, delve into the patterns, and allow them to foster our character, allow them to shape the very essence of who we are, who He has called us to be. Each one of us in here have got a divine destiny that Yahweh established before the foundations of the earth were laid. And this month of Shabbat prepares us with the Word to get us into that place that we need to be. Well, why do I say that? Well, we read about in the month of Shabbat that on the first of Shabbat is when Moses began giving his final address to Israel. And we read in Deuteronomy 1, 5, and 6, it says, across the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses began to explain this Torah, this Word, saying, Adonai our God spoke to us at Horeb, saying, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. For the entire month of Shabbat, it is said that Moses would sit in the meeting tent, and just go over Torah. Just repeat the Torah. Just to study it and meditate it. But it was constant repetition of what this Word said. So with us being in this month of Shabbat, same thing. It's a time for us to just be so deeply ingrained in this Word, like Moses was, and to be repeating it and meditating it and just seeking out how it applies to our life and how we should be walking in it and everything like that. But then also, and this is the part where my topic for my sermon came in, is on the 15th of Shabbat is the day that marks the beginning of a new year for trees. And we've done a few sermons in the past about trees and the significance of them, particularly in the month of Shabbat. And so I'm going to kind of touch on that tonight, but I'm going to look at one in particular. So the 15th of Shabbat, marking the beginning of the new year for trees, commonly known as Tu B'Shavat. This day marks the season in which the almond trees, there's a lot to learn from the almond tree. The almond trees, the earliest blooming trees in the land of Israel, emerge from their winter sleep and begin a new fruit-bearing cycle. That is actually kind of a sermon in itself, if you look at it, okay? Where they emerge from their winter sleep and begin a new fruit-bearing cycle. Therefore, it said that the Jewish people calculate the yearly tithe from this day. So that's pretty interesting in itself there. But so before we get into the almond trees, more things about the month of Shabbat. It's a time of not only seeking Yahweh's instruction, but embracing it. Moses, when he spent that entire month, he was embracing Yahweh's word. He was making it a part of himself. He was allowing it to permeate every cell of his being so that the word would just exude out of him. That's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be having the word exude out of us at all times. You know, be prepared in season and out, at a moment. You know, we're firm believers in here that no one ever crosses our path by accident. There's a reason why we're at certain places at a certain time and a certain person comes across our path, whether it's in the checkout line at Market Basket, whether we're at the gas station putting gas in our car, no matter, we could be anywhere, okay? And sometimes it doesn't even take a direct word. The Holy Spirit will lead you, and that's why it's so important to be making sure we're led by Holy Spirit. But he'll say to you, hey, see that individual over there? I need you to go and say this to them, okay? But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's just a smile. We have talked so many times before in here about just how a smile can do something in someone's day. You know, you could be walking in Market Basket, okay, and somebody seems not too happy. They got a scowl on their face or whatever, and you see how often that changes by just a smile. A smile can break so much off of people. You know, and I've learned a lot of that for myself personally with my daughter. And, you know, we say now, right now, at the moment, you know, her ministry, until she starts talking, her ministry is her smile. And I can tell you story after story, account after account, the people that we have met just because of her smiling at them. People that have come up to us, and I didn't even know it. I mean, I remember one time when we were in BJ's, her and I was looking at something, and she was sitting in the cart when she was small enough to be in the cart. And, you know, she was sitting there and I had seen a woman and her children go walking by and didn't even realize an interaction had taken place between Australia and this woman until the woman turned around, came and said something to me. And it was all because Australia smiled at her, okay? So a smile can do amazing things in a person's life. It really can change. It can take somebody's maybe down day, maybe not things going so well day, and just completely turn it around for them. It's just by a smile. But we have words. We have words that can change people's lives. They can change people's eternal lives. So I kind of went off on a little rabbit trail there, but anyways, you know, it's not just a time to seek Yahweh's instruction, but to embrace it. It's also time to understand that there is a process of learning and imprinting his instruction on our heart. We've got to imprint it on our heart. It's one thing we talk about all the time. It's one thing to have head knowledge, but it's totally different when it's in your heart. When you're speaking from your heart, it's totally different from when you're speaking from your head. A lot of times, you know, it's for a lack of a better word, it can be bad to be speaking from your head. Okay? But when you're speaking from your heart, that's a whole different story. Interesting, the month of Shabbat, it's also a time, you know, and I think of this as a biggie. It's a time to live a pattern of integrity, truth, and justice. You know, we're supposed to be people of integrity. We're supposed to be people of truth. We're supposed to be people of justice, okay? But, you know, integrity really speaks a lot just in itself. You know, we're supposed to be a people that walks forth in integrity no matter what. No matter what's going on, no matter what someone's done or said, or you know, we need to be in integrity at all times. That's how we're supposed to carry ourselves. But also in this whole month of Shabbat, you know, interesting, I was looking at some other stuff, and it's the month of blessings, it's the month of fruitfulness, it's the month of restoration. Okay, not only is it a month of rebirth, okay, and renewal, but it's a month of restoration. It's a month of transformation. When you look at the almond tree, you know what he said to Jeremiah, when the Lord said to Jeremiah, what do you see? And he says, I see the shoot of an almond tree, a branch of an almond. And what is it? In the Amplified, it says, you know, it represents alertness and activity. And that's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be alert and active. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but with this whole month of Shabbat, if you're immersing yourself in the Word like you should be, there's really no other choice but to have the Word change you. That's what it's supposed to do. So if we're still caught up in the same stuff we've been caught up in for months and years, we're still getting upset because this one said this or this one looked this way, or we get into spaces about the most ridiculous stuff, you know what? The Word hasn't been changing you. You haven't been letting it change you. Okay, you can't sit there and say that I read my Word every morning and I read it every night and blah, 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 but you're still doing the same junk that you've always been doing. The Word's having no force in your life. But during this month of Shabbat, it's a totally different time. It's a time where we're supposed to be embracing this Word so much, and we're supposed to be allowing it to change the patterns of how we live so that we become everything that He's called us to be. You know, forgive me, but Yahweh's not going to use an individual that walks around humglum, walks around upset about something. You know, Yahweh's not going to use somebody that, you know, instantly gets upset about something. He's not going to use people like that. He's going to use people that are so grounded in His Word that they walk in love 24/7, 365 days a week, 100% of the time. And, you know, I just read this the other day about something, but I was reading something from Nancy Dufresne, and she was saying how we are now in the days, there's no margin for error. There's none. We might have been in a time before where it's like, okay, well, we messed up a little bit. We could, you know, repent and have time or whatever. No, there's no margin for error anymore. The days are too important. They're too significant. But we've come too far. All of us in here have come up to, supposed to have come up to a much higher level. We're not the same people we were when we came in this building, what, 20 years ago? Has it been 20 years? 20-something years? I don't recall. 20, 22, something like that. 22 years. You know, we are not in, I mean, most of us in here were the ones that walked into this building 22 years ago. We are not those same people. You know, thank Yahweh, okay? We're not those same people, you know? But also thank Yahweh that if, you know, we had walked in this building 22 years ago and he had revealed everything that was going to happen over those 22 years. Yeah, no, okay? You know, yeah, no. You know, and there's a reason why He doesn't, because He knows that we really like, yeah, no, okay? You know, but He's got a specific plan and purpose and destiny for all of us. And in the month of Shabbat is a time to grab a hold of it. Grab a hold of it and to glean it and allow it to embrace everything of who we are and whose we are. It's also a time to break free from what has enslaved us. So think of it. You know, anything that is still, you know, still wrapping its tentacles around us and causing us to step off the path or step out of position. Anything that has been enslaving us, whatever it may be. You know, I think I shared on Sabbath an example of an incident where I had to fight fear. You know, anything that may entangle us, any type of fear, worry, anxiety, whatever it could be. This is the month to break free from that and see the redemption and the restoration of it. It's also a time where, speaking of the 15th of Shabbat, to honor and discover more of what that day means. If you just look at that one day and the whole thing about the day when the earliest trees begin to bud in Israel, there's a promise of what's to come. And the promise that's what's to come is restoration. The promise that's what's to come is a manifestation of the blessings. And so, with that being said, with the almond tree, and I was doing a study on it and stuff, and Jordan and I preached on trees before, and the strength of trees, and all these different type of trees and stuff. But I want to focus on the almond tree because of what I'm talking about tonight, being rooted in the Word. But the root word, I've already said some of this, but the root word for almond means to be alert and awake in every sense. All right, do you get what that means? To be alert and awake in every sense. In every sense, in every way that we walk, but in every sense, be alert and awake with what you're seeing. Be alert and awake with what you're hearing. Be alert and awake of how you're feeling. Okay? Feelings are the biggest game breaker. Okay, feelings can cause you to lose a battle like that. But we need to be alert and awake in every sense, as it, like the almond tree, as it is the very first tree to blossom, bud, and bear fruit each year. There's a significance in that. It's the first tree. It's the earliest tree to bud, blossom, and bear fruit every single year. You know, once an almond tree starts producing almonds, it produces almonds forever, for the duration of the almond tree's life, where you could have like an apple tree produce fruit, and that apple tree might not come back the following year. With an almond tree, you're guaranteed for it to come back and continue producing fruit, time after time again. Now, I didn't know that about an almond tree, but when I was researching about the almond tree, this thing came up about it, about an actual almond orchard in California, and they were talking about that almond trees, they're so strong and resilient. A lot of times they can stand under any type of weather. Okay? Now relate yourself to an almond tree. We're supposed to be able to stand up against any type of weather. Any type of storms that the enemy may try to bring, any type of storms that the almond tree endures, okay? It can stand up against the storm. We're supposed to be able to stand up against the storm. So it blossoms, buds, and bears fruit. We're supposed to be bearing fruit at all times. So interesting, I heard somebody, they were talking about the almond tree, and they were saying that Holy Spirit had spoken this to them. And he said he heard them say, "I am awakening my sons and daughters in this season in a way, unlike times past, because this is the season where they are going to experience my resurrection power." You know, we've been talking about that a lot, some lately, about how his resurrection power resides inside of us. I've heard Pastor George recently talking about it. You know, the Spirit of God is in us. Resurrection power resides in us. Resurrection power is rises up out of us. That's what we got to be confessing every day. The Spirit of God is in me. You know, it's something I started doing every morning. The Spirit of God is in me. Resurrection power is at work in me right now, in the name of Yeshua. Well, they were saying this, and they were saying that, you know, season where they're going to experience my resurrection power, to not just come alive from a place of dormancy, but to blossom with a fragrance of life. Now, if you read about that says that in 2 Corinthians 2:15, where it talks about how we're supposed to be blossoming like a fragrance. And then it says, bud and bear ripe fruit in this season. Okay? We're kind of like in the final season of the game. Okay? We really are. We're in the last of the last days. The game is starting to wind down. You know, we're no longer in the first quarter anymore. We're in the fourth quarter. And the fourth quarter's time is beginning to wind down. So we've got to take the opportunity. We've got to jump on the opportunity of the time that we are in and this month of Shabbat to be walking the way we're supposed to be walking. You know, like Yeshua, I only say what my Father tells me to say, what I hear him say. I only do what he tells me to do. That's how we're supposed to be. You know, and he's going to, if you put yourself in the right position and get everything out of this month, he's going to reveal things to you. He's going to give you a word for another person. He's going to give you insight into a situation or a circumstance that an individual might be going through. And you could have the answer for them. But you won't have that unless you've been embracing yourself in this word like you're supposed to. So interesting, another thing just real quick about the almond tree. When you read the story of the account of Moses back in Exodus, and when he took the rod to strike the rock to get the water, that rod was an almond branch. Okay? Now I didn't know that, but it's interesting that they were researching it, and they were saying that that rod that he used was from an almond tree. Well, you think about it, why would it be an almond tree? Well, you think of everything about what the almond tree is. What was taking place? Moses was leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Okay? What does the almond tree represent? A time of activity and alertness. A time of strength and awakening. So it kind of makes sense, so to speak, that it would be an almond branch that Moses would use to strike that rock to have that water gush forth. Just kind of a little interesting, I don't know, tidbit for that one. But anyways, so to get into what I was talking about, I was going to go to Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 8. And in the Amplified it says, "For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters that spreads out its roots by the river. And it shall not see and fear when heat comes, but its leaf shall be green. It shall not be anxious and full of care in the year of drought, nor shall it cease yielding fruit." That's how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be that tree planted by waters that spreads out its roots by the river. We're supposed to be, not fear when heat comes. Now, I took that when heat comes, like when the enemy comes with a battle or a challenge or something, when the enemy tries to throw a storm at you or whatever, not to fear, but its leaf shall be green. We're supposed to be trees firmly rooted with green leaves, standing strong and tall. Shall not be anxious and full of care in the year of drought, nor shall it cease yielding fruit. The word says was it 1 Peter, not to be anxious about anything. Okay? Not to be anxious about anything. Be full of care about stuff, nor shall we cease yielding fruit. So everything that represents what a tree is how we're supposed to be. Standing strong, deep roots, not fearing, not being anxious, no matter what heat or drought or whatever comes, but always bearing fruit through those seasons. So with the being rooted in the Word, the image of a tree, I'm getting off of the almond tree for a second, but the image of a tree in general is a tree that's planted by water speaks of resilience, it speaks of nourishment, and it speaks of stability. So think of that. Being stable, being resilient, being nourished. But with the almond tree, it takes all that with a bunch of other stuff added to it. And it's a tree that grows in challenging climates, but also thrives when rooted properly. When you're rooted properly, you'll thrive. We're not just meant to survive, we're meant to thrive. Flourish and thrive. Well, think about that when they say about trees, flourishing, okay? Flourishing and striving. So, with the almond tree standing firm, drawing from the steady stream of water, it's unshaken by the heat or drought. Now, as I'm saying this, see yourself as the almond tree. Okay, that's the picture that I'm trying to create. See yourself as the almond tree. The tree represents someone whose life is rooted in the Word of Yahweh. When the heat of life's trials or the drought of spiritual dryness comes, the tree remains steadfast. No matter what, the tree remains steadfast. The key here is that it is rooted, okay? Not just superficially, but deeply in the source of life. And what is the source of life? This book. What is the source of life? Yeshua. Being deeply rooted in Yeshua and being deeply rooted in this word. Well, we know Psalm very well in here. But Psalms 1, starting at verse 1, says, blessed, happy, fortunate, prosperous, and enviable. Now, I like the way the Amplified Classic says that, okay? It's talking about us. So, blessed are we, happy are we, fortunate are we, prosperous, and enviable. It is the man who walks and lives not in the counsel of the ungodly, following their advice, their plans and purposes, nor stands submissive and inactive in the path where sinners walk, nor sits down to relax and rest where the scornful and the mockers gather. But his delight and desire are in the law of the Lord, and on his law he habitually meditates by day and night. Verse 3, and he shall be like a tree firmly planted and tended by the streams of water, ready to bring forth its fruit in its season. Its leaf also shall not fade or wither, and everything he does shall prosper. Everything he does shall prosper. How? Because you're like a tree firmly planted. You're like a tree that's rooted so deep in this word that everything that we do will prosper. And the Amplified goes on to say, and come to maturity. So, the almond tree has early budding and quick to respond. In the Bible, the almond tree is symbolic of watchfulness and readiness. The word almond in Hebrew is shakad. Is that how you say it? Shakad, which means to be alert or to hasten. The almond tree is one of the first to bloom in the spring, showing signs of life and readiness long before other trees. Now think about that. Long before other trees, the almond tree is beginning to come to life. Similarly, when we are rooted in his word, we become spiritually alert. When we're rooted in this word, we walk in divine wisdom. When we're rooted in this word, we walk in divine revelation. But just as the almond tree quickens in its season, we too need to become quick in our season. And like I said, we're in the final season. We're in the final season, and we need to be quick to respond. We need to be quick to respond to his leading. Like we believe it was on Sabbath when we were talking about hearing and obeying. There's to be prompt obedience. As soon as you hear him do something, it's obey. Mom used to say all the time, hear, obey. It was like one word, hear, obey. As soon as you hear something, you obey. There's quick to respond to his leading, hearing his voice, and acting upon it. One thing to hear and just hear, but it's a whole other thing to hear and act upon it. So being rooted in his word isn't just about surviving through the seasons. It's about flourishing, bearing fruit, and being ready for whatever Yahweh calls us to do. At a moment's notice. We never know, well, we've had it actually take place here a few times during OFT. Different incidences that have taken place that we've got involved in. But you need to be ready at all times. Be ready beforehand when someone walks through that door and they are in a dire situation and they need something. They need just that one word from Yahweh. Okay? You've already got to be ready and prepared for it. You can't be all of a sudden thinking, oh gosh, where's the word? What does it say? No, you've already got to be ready and prepared and so rooted in him that you'll instantly hear Holy Spirit say to you, this is what you need to say to him. This is what you need to do. This is, lay hands on them and say this. Being so rooted in the word. So it's not just about surviving the seasons. It's about flourishing, bearing fruit, and being ready for whatever he calls us to do. When we're rooted in the word, deeply rooted, we can respond quickly to his direction, and we can produce fruit even when others might wither. And we're going to see a lot of withering around us, unfortunately. We kind of already have been seeing it take place. A lot of withering, a lot of turning away, a lot of things going on that shouldn't be going on. But being rooted by Yahweh's word, being nourished by it, is continual growth and stability. We're always growing. Like we're always growing. Kind of like you think about. I'm not much into planting stuff from a seed, okay? I think the only time I did it is when we did it in homeschool with the children, first time planting a seed, right? But it's like when you plant a seed, and do you instantly get the tree or whatever we're planting? You know, we planted cucumbers, I think was one of the things. It was like, okay, we planted the seed in the soil, we watered it, and then poof, instantly there was a cucumber. No, that's not how it works. It would be nice if it worked that way, okay? They poof, cucumber, I want a tomato. Doop, there's my tomato, okay? It doesn't work that way. It takes time. It takes time. Why does it take time? Because that fruit or that vegetable or that tree has got to get its roots down into that soil. And it's got to get the nourishment and the strength and the stability that it needs to survive to become that cucumber or to become that tomato. I'm trying not to laugh because I instantly think of VeggieTales for some reason. I honestly was a mistake to pick a cucumber and tomato. Those were just the two things that came into my mind first. But you know, so it takes time. It takes time for that fruit to become what it was destined to become. And it takes time. Why? It needs sun, it needs water, it needs the proper soil, it needs all these things to help it to not only just survive, but to thrive. And then eventually no longer survive because somebody's going to eat it, but that's a whole other story, okay? But you know, that's how we're supposed to be. It's just not, okay, one morning we wake up, we read a word, and poof, we're a Gloria Copeland, okay? No, it takes time. Look at Mom, okay? I honestly don't know of anybody else that I could use as an example of someone who day in, day out, from morning to night for years has invested so much time in the Word, so much time in reading the Word, so much time in reading books, so much time listening to teachings and sermons, and I mean, you're probably talking thousands upon thousands of hours, no exaggeration, okay? And looked at the type of individual she is, okay? A tree, okay? She is a solid, stable, secure, rooted tree that nothing shakes her. I mean, I've been in enough situations with her, walked through enough things with her to watch how she responds to something. And when she says none of these things move me, she really can honestly say none of these things move me. Why? You know, she just didn't become that way overnight. Okay? She invested that time. She embraced the Word. And honestly, you know, the main primary factor probably of it was because how much she loves Yahweh and wants to please Him. That's her ultimate goal. Her goal is all about Him. Her goal is all about walking out the destiny that He has for her, but the destiny that she has to impact all the people that she's impacted. I know I can say for myself, and I'll only talk for myself, but my life was totally changed when I met her. Now, I could say I came from one way and now I'm another way. You know, kind of like, is that Chosen that has that, I used to be different or whatever it said, you know, one point I was this way, but now I am this way type of thing, okay? Because of her. And she's invested so much in herself that she's able to invest in others. And there's victory. There's success in it. You know, you're not going to get to a point, you're not going to have, say, for instance, you have a vision or a goal or a dream or whatever. A lot of us in here are big into the vision and doing stuff like that. And you've got a goal, you've got a destiny of who you might want to become or what you might want to do. You've got to invest that time into it. You've got to invest whatever. So I want to, you know, do something and it has to do with finances. You've got to invest the time in studying about that. You know, Mom invested in time in quantum physics. And how much have we learned about quantum physics? And it's ultimately led us to learning about the fourth dimension, okay? Because that's where it all lies, is in the fourth dimension. But in order for yourself to produce fruit, in order for yourself to go somewhere, you've got to invest in that. You've got to invest in yourself. You've got to invest the time in reading the Word, the time in listening to teachings, the time to reading books. You've got to invest in yourself so that you become that strong, secure, stable tree. Like a gardener, like somebody that does an orchard. They invest tons of time and energy and money into making sure that orchard not just grows, but produces. That's what we're supposed to be, investing the time and the energy in ourselves so that we're not just growing, but we're producing. And what are we producing? Fruit. Well, what kind of fruit is it supposed to be? Not some rotten apple, okay, that falls off the tree and a deer comes along and eats, all right? We're supposed to be producing good fruit, solid fruit, okay? Something that is nourishing, not just for us, but I would actually say more importantly, for others. Because there are so many people outside these doors that are lost, that are hurt, that don't know any other options. But there's an answer for everybody. Yahweh has an answer for everybody. So just as a tree, we're nourished and there's continual growth and stability, and we get nourished from this word. We get everything that we need from this word. We need to be rooted by the word. Well, like I said, when you look at a tree, and it says, what does it say? Planted by streams of water. Okay? Planted by streams of water. What is the living water? Okay? We know what the living water is. Well, just like a tree in the natural, okay, needs water to grow, we need the living water to sustain us. This is the only thing that's going to sustain us through everything, is the living water of the Word. The nourishment that tree receives from the stream enables it to remain vibrant and fruitful in all seasons. Okay? Likewise, we must continually take in the nourishment of this word, not just once a week. Okay, show up at church on Sabbath and then we live the rest of the week the way we want to live it. No, as a daily habit. It's got to be embracing of this word as a daily habit. Like Mom says, the moment your eyes wake up in the morning and you're in the word, when you go to bed at night, you're in the word, bookend it. You bookend your day in the morning and at night, you bookend it with the word. That's what it's supposed to be. It's in the word of Yahweh that we find the spiritual nourishment that strengthens our faith. We've been talking so much about faith, been on this faith series for quite a few weeks now, and this is how we do it. This is how we get the aggressive faith, the audacious faith, the mountain-moving faith, the bulldog faith, the faith that enables us to do anything, the faith that enables us to make the impossible possible, the faith that causes us to be able to walk through any situation or circumstance without even smelling like smoke. The faith that we need to be able to overthrow anything the enemy tries to come our way. That's what it's about. As we root ourselves in this word, we find the wisdom for our lives. We find shalom in the midst of challenges. Okay, now I'm not talking about shalom when everything's going right, but I'm talking about shalom when the enemy tries to throw something. There's the most important time when you really need shalom. Nothing missing, nothing broken. Life in wholeness. I shared on Sabbath about our story with Azraelia, and that was one of the biggest things that was spoken to me was shalom. Keep your shalom in this situation. So it wasn't just for me, but it was for her. And things that I know about shalom, every time something happened, I was right there in her ear saying life and wholeness, because that's what shalom means. Shalom means nothing missing, nothing broken. Nothing missing, nothing broken. Life and wholeness. Total shalom. And this is a firm foundation for us in every season. Okay? And you think of seasons and you think of winter, spring, summer, fall type of thing. No, it's every season of life. Okay, life has its own seasons. And it's every season that we go through in life. The almond tree gives us an example of how we can grow steadily in Yahweh's word, bearing fruit that reflects his character. As we continually meditate on this word, like it says in Joshua, meditate on it day and night, it nourishes us deeply. So just like the almond tree, we produce fruit that is timely, abundant, and in season. Okay? timely, abundant, and in season. That's what we're supposed to be like, that almond tree. So just quickly back to something about the almond tree, how it signifies being alert and aware, active alertness and stuff, how we're supposed to be awakened to things. Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13, it says, "Be alert and on your guard. Stand firm in your faith. Your conviction respecting man's relationship to Yahweh and divine things, keeping the trust and holy fervor born of faith and a part of it." We've talked before about how we need to be staying aware and alert in the days that we're in. Being aware of your surroundings. We talked about it on Sabbath. But the end of verse 13 says, "Act like men and be courageous and grow in strength." That's an almond tree. An almond tree grows in strength. I'll say that an almond tree is courageous, okay, because it can stand up against the harsh weather conditions. It can endure against storms. But that's what we're supposed to be. The word says right there, it's a command. Okay, it's not a suggestion, it's a command. Act like men and be courageous and grow in strength. You know, what else does it say in Joshua? It doesn't only say meditate on the word day and night, but it says to be strong and courageous. Okay, quite a few times through that first chapter. Be strong and courageous. That's where we're supposed to be, strong and courageous. So the question is, and the question is not, are you rooted in the Word? Because I know most of us in here are rooted in the Word. The question is, how deeply rooted are you in the Word? Okay, there's all different types of roots. Are you rooted? Well, I was going to say, are you rooted like a weed? But some weeds have pretty strong roots. I know up where we are, we got all that bamboo stuff, and man, if you just let it get to a foot tall, you try to yank that thing out and it's not going anywhere. That's why you got to get it as soon as it's springing forth. And forget it when it gets to reach 8, 9, 10 feet tall. That root of that bamboo tree is not going to be plucked for anything. It's just not, okay? So I'm not going to say that we need to be like a weed or a bamboo tree, okay? But it has this strong, strong roots. How deeply are your roots? How deep do your roots go in the Word? Like the tree planted by the water, we are called to be anchored in this Word. So that no matter what challenges come, no matter what we see, over the next 4 years, or no matter what goes on in this world, no matter personally, nationwide, family-wise, no matter what, we will stand firm and fruitful. And just as the almond tree buds, we need to be quick to respond. The almond tree quickly buds, we need to be quickly responding, bearing fruit in all times. So just to end, to talking about asking yourself that question about how deep is your roots. So I decided to look up what tree had the deepest roots, okay? Now, and interesting, it's the wild fig tree. And so the wild fig tree in South Africa's Echo Caves has the deepest known tree roots, reaching 400 feet underground. That's massive. Think of that. 400 feet underground. It's deeper than a football field and the Eiffel Tower. Think about taking the Eiffel Tower and trying to bury it, okay? That's how deep the roots of this wild fig tree grow. The deep roots can survive in harsh climates, so I hope so, 400 roots that are 400 feet deep, survive in harsh climates, droughts, and floods, and also provides stability, not just for itself, but to the soil, and prevents erosion. There's a sermon in that, okay? You don't just provide stability for yourself, but to the soil, and prevent erosion. And interesting, I thought, oh, this is cool too. However, they can also damage nearby buildings and other trees. Think of that. The strength of a root of the tree can damage a building, can damage the concrete of the building. That's how we're supposed to be. our roots so deep and strong that we damage, okay, the enemy. That we could be like, in an example, damage and get through a building like that. That's how strong. But 400 feet underground are the roots of this tree. I mean, that's just astounding. It's like, wow, okay? Kind of gives you a whole perspective on it. So really, how deep are your roots in this word? They got to be deep, deep. You've got to be so anchored and tied to this word, like this wild fig tree, okay, like the almond tree, that no matter what comes, flood, droughts, the climate's changing, massive storms, whatever, no matter what comes, nothing moves the tree because of its root, because of how deep the root is, how far down that root goes. So what we need to do as people of the Word, we need to commit ourselves to being rooted and grounded in His Word no matter what, ever ready to respond to His call. And just like that tree, we'll be nourished, unwavering, and full of life. We're talking about seasons. This isn't no longer the season to just warm a pew. Okay? It's a season to get up and get about who you're called to be. To get up and start doing what Yahweh's called you to do. And just like that almond tree, just like that wild fig tree, surviving through anything, that's how we're supposed to be. But we're only going to get that way if we're deeply rooted in Yahweh's Word. Amen. Well, I hope you all gathered something out of it tonight, and we will see you on Sabbath at 11 a.m. Until then, have a blessed week.